Hey there, I'm Simon Owens, Assistant Managing Editor at U.S. News & World Report. Here with me is defense reporter John Bennett. Today we're discussing a recent string of attacks against U.S. forces in Afghanistan and whether they have any connections to the very Afghan army we're currently training ahead of our withdrawal. So John, just tell me about these attacks. How long have they been going on? How rampant are they? And what evidence has amassed on who's actually carrying out the attacks?
This year there have been 32 attacks on U.S. and NATO forces by either Afghan security forces or individuals, meaning Taliban and Al-Qaeda individuals, in full Afghan security garb, posing as Afghan soldiers. That allows them, of course, access to U.S. and NATO troops. So 32 of those attacks this year. We're not even at the end of August. Last year, for example, there were 21 for the entire 2011. Mm-hmm. These attacks have gotten the attention of everyone. The rate has gotten the attention of everyone, up to Secretary Panetta, General Dempsey, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, President Obama, and Afghan President Karzai. In fact, General Dempsey was in Afghanistan this morning or this week to discuss this and other issues with Karzai and other Afghan officials. And there was a rocket attack at Bagram Air Base where his plane was parked. Now, he wasn't in the plane. He was in his personal quarters at the time. I believe it was 1 or 2 a.m. Afghanistan time. Rocket attack that actually damaged his aircraft. So these attacks are picking up. They're becoming more high profile. And that has definitely, it could shape the end of this war. It could take something politically for the U.S. that looks like maybe a slight victory, or something like Iraq that, at least right now, still looks like that was mostly a draw, a time limit draw. And if the Afghans are shooting at us, the forces that we're supplied, as you alluded to, the very forces we're training are shooting at our guys just as we're trying to get out of there. It could really make this look bad for the U.S. and its allies on the way out.
So is there evidence that it's the actual people we're training and not just imposters who are adopting the guard or the garb?
The NATO command and the NATO command in Afghanistan and the Pentagon continue to tell me and others that, for the most part, the evidence shows these are Afghan security forces, that there's very little evidence that these are Taliban or Al-Qaeda infiltrators. And that puts a stain on everything that's been done. And everything that's been done to train up those forces. The Obama strategy is to train as many of those forces, build up to 350,000 as quickly as possible, and then hand them control of provinces and villages, get them in the lead, our forces pull back. But what that depends on is a lot of coordination, a lot of collaboration, and a lot of very close work between our guys and the Afghans as we're showing them how to do things, as we're observing them taking over. And if there's a constant threat that one of their guys is going to turn his gun on 2 or 3 U.S. or NATO soldiers at any given time, there is a possibility that that effort to train those guys could have to be slowed down substantially, and that puts the entire strategy at risk.
Well, what do you think the motives are behind on it? Is it to get us to actually stay? I know that some have been frustrated that we're starting to withdraw our support, both material and training, slowly. Is that the strategy behind it, or is it just anti-American sentiment?
It seems to be, from the folks I've talked to, a little bit of everything that you mentioned. There is a growing anti-American sentiment. Look, we've been occupying their country. I know a lot of people don't like to use that word, but if it walks like a dog and barks like a dog, it's a dog. We've occupied their country for almost a decade now, and they're upset about that. They want us to leave. They're not so sure we're going to leave, a lot of them. A lot of them feel like we have done their country harm over the last 10 years, that we haven't made things better for the average Afghan. So there's frustration there. And there is evidence that some of these shootings had some Taliban involvement, that some of these guys were plants, some of the earlier attacks earlier this year. And I think that is a factor. Some of these guys do find themselves, even though they've gone through the training, they are Afghan security forces, I think a lot of them are just fed up, and they find themselves thinking about a future where the U.S. isn't going to be there, and they find themselves more sympathetic to the Taliban cause, and this is how they choose to act out.
And in terms of the actual withdrawal itself, other than the perception of the war after withdrawal, is there anything that this could really change in terms of the withdrawal itself, in terms of strategy or timeline?
I don't think so at this point. I think it would take something very catastrophic. It would take shooting down General Dempsey's plane as it's taking off or landing in Afghanistan. It could take something like the assassination of President Karzai.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would have to be something really, really high profile and really substantial for the U.S. and its allies, who they burned a lot of political capital in coming to this agreement. It was a months-long effort by the U.S. to bring the allies on board this 2014 timeline. And if the Obama administration or a Romney administration after it just threw up their hands and said, no, we're out of there now,
mm-hmm.
or even we're staying longer, I just don't think they want to take that risk with their allies, because as we've seen in the last 10 years, you need your allies, and you never know when you're going to need them. And to go back on that, to change that 2014 date would really take something major, and I don't think these shootings that happen, 1 or 2 a month, I just don't think that's enough to really swing it toward a big change.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's all we have for you today. Thanks for joining us at U.S. News and World Report. To learn more, visit us on the web at usnews.com.